I'm Brent Leary.
Paul Greenberg.
Excuse the intrusion. It's Friday. That means it's sports. And that also means I am debuting another brand new Ram shirt. Look at the color. I like this one. Really like this one.
The Rainbow Rams.
The Rainbow Ram. Plus, I still have the traditional logo
of course
here. And I've got the other logo I like the best here. Although I will say the shirt I wore yesterday, I like that one.
And that's the new logo, right?
Yeah, that's the new. It's starting to, it'll never replace my feelings for the traditional ones. But
well, I still think that weirdly, I think other than your shirt, which made it look like a medallion to me, right? I think the new logo is terrible, but
it is.
For some reason, it worked on that shirt, and it really did look like a medallion.
That's the only medallion I'll probably ever have. So.
We became the head vizier of the Rams.
If only I knew what that meant. That's all right. So this is going to be a fun show. We're going to have our buddy. It's fun. It's a show about sports. And is this the first sports guy? I mean, like currently affiliated with a sports team that we've actually had on?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, in the past, we've had them on regular Playaz episode. No,
right. Second.
Jason, Jay Lumsden.
He's for Boston. I don't really include him.
He doesn't count.
Yeah, that's right. You cannot. Actually, that was one of our best. Excuse the intrusion. If you think about that show,
yeah,
we got into a lot of stuff on that show.
Yeah, it was a good.
And we'll get into a lot of stuff on this show when we bring our buddy Russell on. From the New York Football Giants. I love that. You can't, and I'm going to ask him about it too, by the way, but they haven't been the New York Baseball Giants since like the 57, right? I mean,
right.
So is it about time to drop the football in New York Football Giants? I'm going to ask him.
That's sort of a weirdly loaded question the way you think it.
Well, I'm a weirdly loaded guy sometimes, so we'll talk about that.
I think you stopped in college for that.
Oh boy, it's gonna be one of those shows, folks. But before we have him on, I've been watching a lot of YouTube lately. I know you have too, mostly for video stuff.
I know how to set up a friggin' mic stand.
Yeah, well, yeah, you can walk through that one when we do CRM Playaz Tech when we start that up. But I mean, I've just been watching a ton of YouTube, and there's no live sports, so I've been watching a lot of recorded sports. And somewhere along the line, somehow they feed you suggestions and recommendations based on what you've been watching. And somewhere along the line, Mike Tyson came up.
Really?
Yeah, and it just sparked a whole bunch of just really cool memories of before he, went to jail. He was just destroying people.
I know, he was sort of brutal.
It was. Matter of fact, I'm going to show a whole fight, the entire fight, the Mike Tyson, Marvis Frazier title fight from 1986. We're going to show the whole thing right now. Let's do it because it is the whole thing. It might take most of the show, so I better start showing it now. So here we go. We're going to show the whole fight right here. Excuse the intrusion. The whole fight. Here we go.
I remember, by the way.
And take it away, Mike and Marvis.
And comes out slugging. He comes out smoking like Marvis's father Joe. Marvis must move or we're going to be out of here very, very quickly.
And that will do it. And that will do it for the whole fight.
I remember that fight. It was unbelievable.
That was the whole fight. Yeah, it was less than 30 seconds. The American court. I have to know who. Wait a minute. It's this. Is this? Could this be Esteban again?
It's got to be Esteban. He would be the only one who would say that.
Well, it's linked in there. I actually know somebody else who would be saying this.
You do?
He works for Small Business Trends. Yes.
Really? Oh, I know your buddy.
Yeah, Joshua. Well, I don't know if that's him or not because I can't tell. It just says LinkedIn user. Our buddy Michael Thomas.
Hey, Michael.
Is that an ear?
Yeah, it is. He likes ears. He likes ears.
Oh, okay.
I
Yeah,
get it. He
there it
likes
is.
ears.
31 I'm sorry, I was off by a second. There it is.
Well, it's hard
That is how long the show. Good old Bob.
That's how long we want you on the show.
Yeah, that's right. Isn't somebody calling you right now, Bob? Yeah. Yeah. All right. So yes, what is?
I think it's Esteban misspelling a word.
Oh, is that it? I don't know because there is another guy I know. What happened? I went across the fight was over. That was pretty much how it went back in the day.
Yeah.
And so that it's definitely Esteban now.
Yes.
Because I don't think Joshua knows Kim Brault. So
no, that is Esteban.
Come on, man. And Marshall, have a good
Wow.
Marshall's too busy.
I know. Well, thank you, Marshall. Thank you, Dad.
That's right. Yes, of course it is.
Yeah, it had to be. It would never. Nobody else. Nobody I knew beyond Esteban would have ever talked about American Cornhole Championship.
See, I know. That's why I was torn because I had just talked about Cornhole was actually on ESPN on I think it was July the 4th, and I actually watched the Cornhole Championship because it.
You did?
I almost don't want to say this because Esteban is actually on. It was kind of interesting.
You know what? There was this. I remember I saw it months ago when they were like in semifinals or something, and there was this big, heavy-set guy. I don't know. I can't remember his name now, but he was really good. He was really good. Like he could literally. I mean, I'm not saying he did do this, but this is the kind of guy who could literally shut his eyes and turn around and do it over his shoulder and still like get it in.
What?
Yeah, he was this guy was amazing.
That's like the Steph Curry of cornhole.
Kind of like that. I mean, he didn't do that. He was playing seriously, but if there's such a thing as serious American
serious cornhole there.
Cornhole games.
All right. So I played that clip because it just brought back memories. So I got a question for you.
Okay.
What is the most memorable fight, in your opinion, in the history of fighting? Like, what one captured your attention the most?
It was pretty much the obvious one. Ali Frazier was one.
First, second, third?
Oh, actually, good question. First, not so much the third, but first.
The first one I think was the best.
That was the best fight. I mean, I watched after. I didn't watch the live. I don't remember doing that, but I do remember seeing it afterwards, and of course, talked about forever. But that was actually.
That might have been the most vicious left hook I have ever seen anybody throw. When Joe Frazier threw that left hook flush onto Muhammad Ali's, right here.
I know.
And he got up. How the heck did he get up from getting hit like that? That's why I give Muhammad Ali so much credit. He was tougher than most people.
Oh, I
even think he was.
I'll put it this way. I've never been a big boxing fan. I was a huge Ali fan. I boxing never particularly loved it. I mean, I let's put it this way. I read more about it than I did watch it. So I would look, I knew the history of boxing, and I would watch the, James Corbett and Freddie Fitzsimmons and Jack Johnson and that whole.
You wait a minute. You watched Jack Johnson?
Oh, no, I read.
You say you were at the Max Schmeling Joe Louis fight.
I'm Jack Johnson's manager, right? But the Schmeling Lewis fight, that's probably the most politically significant fight ever.
Yeah, that you're right about that.
That was like Jesse Owens in the Olympics, right?
Wait a minute. Was it the first one or the second one? Because remember, Max Schmeling won the first one.
Right. Well, it was 38, I think was the second one. Right?
36 and 30. It was 36
Then
for
30
the first one, and then 38 for the second one, because I think it was right before. Wait a minute.
No,
36 is the 36 was the year that the Germany hosted the Olympics, right?
right. That was Jesse Owens and the Olympia in Berlin. Right. It was 30.
I think it was 37 and 38 or 9.
It would be 30. No, it wasn't 39 because Germany was.
Then it had to be 38 or 37.
I'm guessing 38. Maybe.
Okay.
But it was the fight where Lewis beat Schmeling. That was
He came back and he just destroyed him.
It was so politically important that happened at that time.
Yeah.
Right?
No. You're right. That was so for me. I'm torn because I also think about Jack Johnson becoming the first black heavyweight and what he had to go through to do that. And then I think of, Joe Louis, Max Schmeling. But my favorite fight of all time, Marvin Hagler, Tommy the Hitman Hearns. There was only 3 rounds, but if go watch it on YouTube. Those 3 rounds were the best 3 rounds. They came out of the whole gate throwing at each other. I mean, they were going at each other left and right. It couldn't have lasted much longer than 3 rounds because there were so many punches being thrown. It was just unbelievable. And then Marvin hit him with this one. He made Tommy Hitler, Tommy the Hitman Hearns. Jeez, what a terrible mistake that was.
Going in Lewis, remember?
Yeah. Tommy the Hitman Hearns. Marvin Hagler hit him so hard, he started smiling, and then his legs just left him. It got real stiff, and then he hit him again, and then it was just all over. But 3 rounds, 9 minutes. That was boxing, man. I love that.
Yeah. See, for me, I liked all the political boxing parts, but that was my thing because when Ali fought. Of course, he was in the midst of all the political activity going on at the time, and the Jack Johnson fight was another one, and then Louis Schmeling, because they all had political significance of some kind, right? So those 3 were really.
Well, wait a minute, you're missing a 4th one that had all sorts of political consequences.
What was that?
That was Rocky IV, when Rocky fought Ivan Drago. I mean, come on, how can you leave that one out?
Communism ended that day. The wall fell. That day.
Well, I knew it was gonna. The importance of that fight really got amped up when Drago killed what's his name? Clubber, not Clubber Lang. It was the other guy.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Apollo Creed. When Drago killed Apollo Creed, I knew the importance just chopped off the chain. Man,
yeah, I know.
So I don't know. That might be even more than
yeah.
Schmeling.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm
all right.
Positive Sylvester Stallone would agree.
Isn't there another Rocky movie about to come out?
I don't know. It'd be Apollo. No, it'd be Apollo Creed. The Creed 3.
Oh, well. Oh, if he starts fighting Creed Jr., Rocky versus Creed Jr., I'm out. I can't do that one.
Green Room is already.
I can't do that.
Look at these guys. I guess what I'm trying to say is that if I can change and you can change, everybody can change.
And then we all break out in Kumbaya at the end.
Throwing the lines out, man. Probably a good time to bring them in.
And on that note, let's welcome our buddy Russell Scibetti.
Hey guys.
Hey,
how you doing, man?
I'm doing all right. Just enjoying listening to you guys.
We always try to start the show on the Excuse the Intrusion with some kind of sports thing that we can just jump off on before we get into the guests.
Every time. I mean, we've also at one point I think we had a guest on, but we got so into the top 15 lists that we almost didn't bring the guest on.
The hanging abs. I'm sorry.
I know. You're going to be distracted by the commentary the whole time. All right. So, Russell, welcome, buddy. All right.
Thank you for having me.
So, for those of you who haven't met, hey, Brent, you do the intro, man. You can do it.
No, you do it so well. Because I got a question. I want to ask him after you do the intro what his favorite fight was. So you do that.
All right. So, Russell. Russell currently, let me make sure I got the title right. It's VP of Business Analytics and Strategy, correct?
Yep, strategy and BI. Yep.
Strategy and BI for the New York Giants. Of course, I'm just going to, of course, show my T-shirt.
Oh, that's right. Was that the one I got you for some kind of?
Yes, this is one that Brent got me. I had the other one from the Yankees, which was Run DMC. That
was a good one.
That was so great when that happened. But so now I've known Russell quite a long time now, and he is, in fact, the reason Brent and I have anything to do with Seat that you've heard us talk about on the show many times. We had Christine on at 1.2 is because of Russell. Really, when I was introduced to Russell, he was running CRM for the Jets, and Russell is the person who asked me about coming to speak at Seat, and it was in Kansas City. And Brent came along, and then the two of us ended up on steering committees and boards at Seat, and we got to see even better the Negro Leagues Museum that day. The day we went, that was like one of the
great trip,
and that was amazing. It's still my favorite Seat for that reason, right? Was that right? So Russell is responsible for that. He went on to become ultimately the president of consulting at Core, right?
I went through a couple. I came in to run product, then I switched to consulting, and then I finished off at CMO before coming back to the team side.
Right. So okay, so actually, before you get the question, so tell us kind of about that odyssey. Why you came back to the team? Why you came back to a team? And the Giants in particular, of course. Why?
Yeah, no, so absolutely. I did a whole career shift going back to grad school in 2006. My background was in IT, and I was a little bit of everything, kind of a Swiss Army knife. I could do coding or system administration or various things, but really wasn't particularly happy about how things were going. And so I always liked the idea of trying to work in sports, and went to grad school to get my MBA, and went to a school that had a sports program with the hope that I could kind of put these two worlds together. And I got really lucky in the sense, because my background of IT, and think about 2006, 2008, that was right when sports started caring a lot more about business technology, CRM, email, research, digital, all that category, which fit in perfectly with me. So, and for me, the idea was always to go work for a team. And my first job was with Comcast Spectacor, overseeing with the Flyers and Sixers in Philly. And then that led to the Jets. So I wanted to work for the team. Alan, with the Jets chance there, I heard a lot of that over the 5 seasons I spent at the Jets. Never thought I would actually go to the vendor side. The vendor side to me was the unexpected thing. And it just was a cool opportunity to help build a company and change their whole operating model. And just like I said, my role kept evolving there. And it was a product I worked with. But, I kind of have a couple of different career pillar goals that I try to focus all my decisions around. And one of them was still I feel like this unfinished business. I want to really keep kind of getting back to the franchise side. My wife and I are tied here to Jersey. So the fact that it was the Giants just down the road, team I grew up a fan of, in the role that I wanted to have, and just all this kind of happened in the same time, was like, wow, this is literally the job and opportunity that checks every box in terms of that one of those big things I want to still accomplish in my career. So definitely couldn't pass that up.
And it sounds like you thoroughly enjoyed it since you got there too, huh?
Oh, it's great. Yeah, it's been I guess it's been about 8 months now. Yep. Okay. And so, half that time's been at home, which is a little weird. But no, it's been everything I thought it was going to be. So it's been a lot of fun.
They're very lucky to have you too.
So when you were you're at the Jets, you heard a lot of chanting, JATS. Did you also hear a lot of crying when you're there?
I had a bit of everything when I was at the Jets. So my first 2 years were the back-to-back AFC Championship games. So that was Sanchez coming out and having that solid rookie year and that good second year, and we had the knocked off the Patriots in that playoff run the second year too. And
now I like that part, knocking off the Patriots. That's good stuff.
The best thing the Jets ever did.
That's one thing Jets and Giants have in common, right? They all wanted to beat the Patriots. But we were close. So the first 2 years was a lot of highs because we were this close to the Super Bowl, back-to-back years. Then it leveled off and dipped off. But that kind of comes with the territory, right? When you work with in a team, you're going to have, or you hope you're going to have the good seasons. Everyone wants to get a ring just like the players do. And, but you're also going to have the down years, and you just ride through the ups and downs.
Now, were you there when what I consider to be the marquee event of the Jets over the last, since they won the Super
no,
Bowl?
I know. I think I know where you're going with this.
Were you there? Maybe even at the game where the butt fumble took place, because that to me is the pinnacle of Jets fandom after that Super Bowl happened.
I know exactly where I was. I know where I was standing when that happened. I remember watching and going, well, maybe it wasn't a fumble, and then watching the replay and going, oh, like the problem is no one realized it was the quote butt fumble when it happened. It was the replay that when you went, oh, that's why he fumbled. And that was, so yes, I was in the ticket office inside the stadium working with our sales and service team. And I remember watching the screen. And so, yes, I was in the building, and it was unfortunate, but it happens.
I just had to pop Alan's question up because, it was good.
Hey, they were back-to-back AFC championship games.
Yeah, he started out strong. Yeah.
Just they didn't win either of them.
So before we get into more football stuff, what was your favorite fight of all time?
I was never a boxing guy. I'm hearing you guys talking about all these great fights, and I mean, I know about them. I know a little bit of the history that I've seen, but I'm sure there were a couple of Tyson fights that I watched that everyone watched in the day. I remember watching Tyson Lewis when he bit his ear, the ear joke earlier. So like there are certain moments I remember, but I was never big in boxing. Never got pulled into UFC either. So yeah, sorry.
No,
that's okay.
I love a good hockey fight. I grew up a Rangers fan, so
hockey fight you remember?
Oh God, I was at one. Actually, the year I worked in Philly, the Phantoms were still, but the Phantoms were still playing in the old arena while the Flyers were playing in Wells Fargo Center. And there was one game where in the first period it was fight after fight after fight. And it was just one of those like all out melees that I watched. That was particularly fun to see in person, like the true minor league team versus team scrap. But anything that involved the Red Wings and the Avalanche during the heyday of that rivalry, the Chris Draper hit, the Claude Lemieux, that whole run of hostility is very memorable.
You mean that fine gentleman Claude Lemieux would cause some problems? And
that hit against Draper still, like you just go, it was painful.
It's funny. I remember the worst, the most brutal hockey fight I ever saw was initiated by a Boston Bruin. Actually, it was, and this goes when I was a kid, so you may not even know the name, but he was an enforcer. His name was Ted Green, and he was the nastiest. He couldn't do anything but hit people. He literally was a defenseman, but all he did was hit people. I mean, he's like nothing else. The irony is, I think he played with the Bruins for several years, meaning they actually kept him around. But this guy, I'll put it this way: he left this guy so bloody. It was like I didn't understand why he wasn't arrested, and I really thought at the time he should have been arrested. I mean, I was 12, maybe 13, but I still like it was a nightmare kind of fight. Again, I'm not a boxing fan particularly. I'm a fan of boxing history more than I am a fan of watching boxing. I don't watch it at all anymore whatsoever. But hockey, I wasn't even a great fan of. The fights look so stupid to me anyway. When they would look like stupid.
So I played hockey a little bit. I grew up in Jersey, so I played roller hockey growing up, and I was a goalie. So the first guys I associated with the goalies, so like Mike Richter, John Van Beesbrook, those were my guys in the 90s. Like I just idolized those two. But the other guys that I connected with were the undersized scrappers, like the guys like Pat Verbeek is a random name for you, or Theo Fleury, or even like Martin St. Louis, even though he was more of a scorer recently. Like this, because I was always this short, skinny kid that felt like I didn't belong. So if I'm going to play sports, I'm going to like have to, overcome my complete lack of talent. So those are the guys I like. 'Cause I always felt like, all right, he's 6 inches shorter, but he doesn't care. I like those guys.
I thought you'd be like a Patrick Waugh, although I always said Patrick Roy because I
right.
Waugh was good. Waugh, he was. I got much more excited about the guys who always seemed like they were like an inch away from like completely falling apart, like Dominic Hasek, who would stand on his head, or Belfort, like Waugh and Brodeur, and those guys who are so perfect in their form and technique and everything, and which is phenomenal. And I love that. But from an enjoyment perspective, there was nothing better than you never knew which way he was going to go. And Hasek was the guy like that who, God, you like literally flip his legs over his head to get to the other side of the post. Like, just the craziest stuff.
He was at Buffalo, right?
Yeah,
he was Buffalo Dallas, that famous Brett Hull foot in the crease game that Buffalo Sabres fans are still probably mad about.
Yeah. Bob Stutz is a big Sabres fan, so we'll ask him. So when you were a kid, I assume you played football. So what was your position? What did you play?
Oh, all right. So you're just, so I didn't really play. Again, I was the.
I don't played in a league. I just didn't play. I
played two forms of football. I played football on the street. Go run to the Pontiac and turn around and I'll hit you. Try not to fall and smash your face into the pavement. That football. And I played football in college, and I'll use air quotes in college because I played as part of the marching band football team. And if you want a story, I'll give you one.
Yeah.
So here, I'm going to plug Rutgers here. So I went to Rutgers undergrad, and I played trumpet for years. I played trumpet in high school, trumpet and marching band in college. But Rutgers has a tradition called Soup Bowl. It was named for one of the old Glee Club directors, Soup Walters. And the origins of the game, which is between the marching band and the Glee Club, is because they used to fight for halftime performance time. And one of the old directors, again, this tradition goes on. They've been playing this game for, I think, 50 years now, over 50 years, one game a year. And it used to be the winner got more time to perform. And then it just evolved since then to just be this rivalry game. And both sides train from the start of the school year through the games normally in like November, December. It's full contact 8-on-8 flag football. Incredibly painful. But I played for 4 years. I played quarterback my senior year, mostly because I could run. It was definitely an improvisation offense. We did not win that year, unfortunately. But that is the closest I had to football glory, was playing for the Rutgers marching band for 4 years.
That's the kind of football we played when we were kids. It wasn't. We played touch or tackle. It wasn't really flag so much. But when we were younger, I don't think flag was barely existing. I was so old. I'm so old. So, but we used to play, to show you just how my universe was aligned. We played so I lived in East Meadow in New York, right? So Long Island, right? And so my area where I lived was all Jewish. Like there was one non-Jewish family in the whole area. And then you literally go across the road and it was all Italian Catholic. And it's Italian Catholic, not like Polish Catholic. It was Italian Catholic. So we would play the Jews against the Italian Catholics. It was literally like, that was our games. It was very good natured and we all got along great. But these, as
long as everyone gets along.
Well, we only won 1 year, right? We won 1 year, but it was because we outsmarted them, literally. It was like almost like classic stereotypical like win, right? Here was the play that won it. Seriously, I actually called this play. I wasn't the quarterback. I had no arm to be that. I was what would be the equivalent of a split end. Well, I wasn't as fast as a typical split end, but I was slow. But I had great hands. My hands were fantastic. So the play, though, was we had crowds who would watch us, like a fairly large group of people from both neighborhoods would come together and watch, and we'd all kind of picnic, and it happened every year, just schoolyard game. So 1 year I designed this play. I remember we were losing. We weren't losing. It was 6-6 with no extra points. Right?
Was the name of the play the annexation of Puerto Rico?
No. Definitely wasn't.
Sorry. I had to get the Little Giants reference in there.
I
Sorry.
got it.
Okay.
Guarantee
Okay.
we're close to that one.
I definitely didn't get that
No,
one.
so what we did was, this is the place. So it's a big crowd. So I lined up sort of, and the crowd was right up against the sideline. So I lined up and looked like a crowd member. I literally looked like a crowd member. I'm not kidding. I lined up in bounds, but close enough to be like a crowd member. And then we had this whole distraction go on the left. And then I just stood there while this distraction going on. The distraction was designed to like run around with the ball for a little while, like deliberately, like just avoid tackling, not go anywhere. And then I just took off down the sidelines when they were all over there. And we won. Ultimately, we won 18-6 thanks to that play. It's I have to tell you, that's one of the proudest moments of my whole life.
Rutgers band always ran historically the Rutgers band runs the option offense, like wishbone, triple option, pounded in the ground, running game. And the Glee Club was always, let's air it out, go deep. And so it was always this contrast of styles of each year. I think they still play like that.
Like 3 yards in a cloud of dust versus like Air Coryell or something.
Air Coryell, there you go.
Pretty much.
It was fun.
So Russell, who was your favorite Giant growing up?
Oh God. Favorite Giant growing up. Probably Sims. You know, I mean, you can't help but I didn't get to the quarter. I think I was just a little too young for peak LT to appreciate really the dominance that he had. So, I was at that point when you're younger watching football, it was Sims and Hostetler had that one crazy good year. Right.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of what I remember. Remember Sims to Bavaro.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah. Not a bad one. Didn't Sims go like 21 out of 25 in the Super Bowl that they ended up winning? That he quarterbacked?
That was the 86 Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Denver. Yeah.
I think he still holds the record for like completion percentage in a Super Bowl or something.
The Super Bowl
Doesn't surprise me.
With Hostetler was really interesting. I remember that same year he went 5-0 when he took over. He went 5-0 and took us straight through. I mean, it was amazing. Mm-hmm. He never had. It was actually always a decent quarterback. I mean, it was never bad. Well, it was even with the Redskins where he was not bad. When he started with them, but that year was just like magic. That was magical, man. So, all right. So, to the extent you can, tell us what you do at the Giants. Just by fill us in.
Sure. So I have business intelligence in my title, but it's purely the business side of the house, right? I am not involved in any of the fun on-field player personnel analytics and drafts and all of that decision-making stuff. We have a whole other set of folks that handle the analytics for on-field and players. So I work with everything really tied to revenue. I report up to our chief commercial officer, and essentially I just help every other department properly leverage technology and data. So that could be everything that's CRM, that's warehousing, that's marketing automation, lead scoring, retention modeling, dashboards, forecasting, project management, kind of anything in kind of that kind of umbrella of topics. That's what we can help with. So I'll work directly with our partnerships team for forecasting and inventory rates and checking on different things there. Same thing, I'll go work with our ticketing team to make sure that we're managing pipeline and contacting the right people and targeting the right campaigns. So it kind of covers a nice breadth of functional areas.
So how does the strategy part of it work relative to what you just described?
Yeah, so to the strategy part kind of comes off of the data side, right? Because the more that we've been able to, and in the last few months, we've done a ton in terms of actually really connecting our systems and getting more visibility into the different elements of the business, is that now we can have better strategic planning. So rather than thinking just about what's happening in the next 6 months, we can really take a longer horizon in how we look at things. And there's also just these other cross-departmental projects that inevitably come up. Right. And so we're already a department that sort of sits cross-departmentally. So it gives us a nice way to kind of help support those other things that might pop up, again, around maybe not sponsorships, but maybe other strategic partnerships that we're looking into What will it help us from the revenue side? How will it help us from understanding of our fans or digital engagement? A lot of those types of projects I work really closely with our VP of digital and of course our chief commercial officer and our partnerships team.
All right. So now let's go another direction, because there's another side of you which not related to the Giants particularly, but it's something that's, I think pretty important to the industry, which is you are a significant influencer in the sports world and the sports business world. And I know, as far as like official recognition, I think very recently you were named part of the 40 under 40 for the Sports Business Journal, which for those of you who don't know, that is the leading business journal in sports. It's literally its name, right? And it's the number one in that regard. And those honorees are not chosen lightly. For years, you've been writing the Business of Sports blog, which is one of the other things, and that had an enormous amount of impact. So let's kind of look at it from that standpoint. So we've got a whole world going on here, but how do you see sports? What do you see sports, given that, almost everybody has dropped seasons or shortened seasons or some things have happened, as someone looking at the big trends in, how do you see sports evolving, changing, regressing, whatever? What do you see going on?
Man, there's a lot going on. There's been a lot of major shifts. I'm going to put aside a little bit of how we're going to get things back on the field, right? There's a lot of people that are trying to, ultimately without the game happening, a lot of other things aren't quite as relevant, right? The first and foremost thing is make sure everyone's healthy, get them on the field and create the sport itself. Now, the way we consume sports is where everything continues to dramatically change. And the shift will vary a lot sport to sport, right? Football is most football teams still have this incredibly strong season ticket base, whereas in other sports, the ticket market is completely fragmented. You have teams like the Oakland A's that are completely blowing up the season ticket model, trying to do things where it's all subscription plan based and you don't even have assigned seats and you're just essentially opting into a certain number of games, maybe some certain areas of the building, but they're just trying to grow this idea of having as many members as possible. Membership models also are very popular in Europe and Australia, where you have to pay to be a member before you even think about buying tickets. So there's a lot of things in flux, and again, maybe more so in other sports than football, how the tickets are evolving. Social media and streaming and digital and OTT, all those things are having big impacts on the model as well. And again, to varying degrees, right? There are some sports that are looking to go pure OTT instead of dealing with, maybe regional sports networks, but that's a lot of money to potentially walk away from on those big media deals in order to try to monetize direct to consumer. Direct to consumer is also really important in terms of how you generate more value for your sponsors, right? Sponsorship is changing. It used to be just about spots and dots or just getting my logo associated to a team. And that's shifting, right? You need to be really smart and measured and track everything you do with all these sponsorship deals now. And they are shifting to have this massive digital element to it because of how measurable it can be for data collection, for ROI tracking. And so even the combination of what assets and how people decide how they put together their sponsorships is fundamentally changing. And a lot of that is through digital and through changing consumer behavior.
Is there any one of those that you just named that you think is going to, let's say, be the most dramatic ultimately will lead to the most dramatic alteration of, and when I say sports, I mean as a whole, regardless of type of sport? Any one of those models or trends or let's say in progress, not quite as discernible?
One of the biggest is probably going to be, how does cord cutting evolve or not, right? Everyone, started talking about cord cutting 10 years ago, 8 years ago, and it's happened, but it's not incredibly prevalent. And the funny thing is, even though there's been this cord cutting to a degree, now you have this rebundling that other services are doing to create some version of the package that people were trying to disconnect from to begin with. So I think how that evolves or doesn't evolve is going to be a big element in terms of other things that other dominoes that fall after that fact. The more and more people do cut, then the more it creates value to try to treat your rights differently for all these different channels than it does to try to sell them as one big number. Internet, and that has a big impact on international rights as well, where you do, international, like things like UEFA, they already chop things up globally a lot more than maybe other sports do.
Can you talk a little bit about the engagement on social channels and how that may be changing? Is it going to be more important going forward, or is it maybe looking at other channels, looking like the mobile device and your mobile apps that you're putting on it? And then talk maybe even this whole thing. You're seeing so many folks kind of walk away, at least for the short term, from like the traditional digital ads. I talked to a number of companies that they cut the budget down to zero in the short term, and then some of them are even saying, you know what, we're finding different ways to interact and engage. We may not go back to the way that we use these ad networks, digital ad networks previously. What do you see happening with like what's going on with you guys and just sports in general?
So a couple different things there, right? So I'm going to carve out mobile for a second first. To me, mobile isn't different than anything else, right? Like it's just, if you just look at the underlying metrics, people are consuming content through mobile. So just everything you need to do needs to be mobile first, right? It needs to work on the bigger experience, but it needs to be mobile friendly, mobile accessible. We see massive volumes of traffic going through our mobile app just for basic content consumption. So it's no longer about you need like a mobile strategy and a non-mobile strategy. It's just everything needs to work cohesively regardless of your choice of how you consume it. So that's kind of how I look at mobile. But you're right, digital engagement, it's huge for us, particularly, I mean, there's all sorts of stats. I don't have the right numbers up in front of me and I don't want to make it up, but there are a lot of stats that show how large a percentage of, say, Twitter content is fundamentally driven off of sports, particularly live sports, right? Same thing happens on Facebook. You see much higher engagement rates in general with sports content across all different social platforms. You see whether that is, an athlete's TikTok video or a team's Facebook page or live tweeting, during events. So it's incredibly important for us because that's where our fans are. Our fans are not just watching a game or just attending a game. We know this, our fans are consuming 2 or 3 different feeds of content at the same time. So we want to make sure, and any sports organization needs to make sure that they are involved, not in a controlling manner, but a participatory manner with all the different places those fans want to create and engage with content. And your point on digital marketing is particularly good off of that, because if you think of it this way, with sponsorships, like I was just mentioning earlier, the reason why teams want to partner with any sports team is because of that affinity, that passion of the fans, right? So now you have fans that are avid, fans of a particular team who highly engage in your content. And if that is where you want your brand to be, right? The brand wants to be, hey, I am helping the team generate this content. So, whether it's behind the scenes footage of practice or the team on the road or all these different things, the more that the partner can be integrated into and feel naturally part of the content, then that will blow away traditional digital advertising where it feels more intrusion based, right? It cannot feel like an intrusion. It has to feel as much of participation as everything else that we're talking about.
One of the interesting, it's almost like it's kind of this unique form of engagement that I've noticed with increasing frequency and more recently has been when I'm a member of a lot of New York Giants Facebook groups, right? And on game days, and sometimes not game days, I've noticed that there's a significant amount of watch parties that they put up, right? And that you can join the watch party. So effectively, I mean, I have, Sunday tickets, so I don't need to join watch parties. But effectively, I can watch the game through the watch party, even though it's, and I can literally join a group of people who are either literally watching it together, meaning they're actually physical presence, or are just digitally coming together with somebody doing the broadcasting. And what's fascinating to me is that nobody even they're not gigantic yet, but they're an interesting form of content, an interesting form of engagement that nobody really pays any attention to, right? Everyone pays attention to Facebook comments and Facebook, communication and conversation, and same with, as you said, Twitter and elsewhere. But the watch parties are not the same breed as that. They don't work that way. And so I'm wondering if there's anything to do with that. There probably is. I'm just not sure what it is yet. Because I mean, it's a mix of traditional and digital simultaneously.
Right. And so there's a lot of things that are organically going to be fan driven that, teams don't need to be participatory in, that they're you want to be supportive of. So the fact that people are watching and they're gathering online or having a virtual watch party, I imagine, thinking about this season and next season, those ideas of virtual watch parties are going to be particularly popular, right. But so we want to, do things to make sure fans are watching and watching with other fans. But teams don't necessarily need to be, you don't have to go to the team to do that, right? Especially, we're lucky. We have one of the largest fan bases in the NFL. And so naturally, we just have this large audience that, of people that are connecting with other fans, whether it's family or people from far away. Where teams, I think, really can add value to those situations is when, say, it's teams are going on the road. So could we do things where if the team is playing a road game in a city, you'll see teams host events related to the fact that we're in a different town, especially around international games. You'll see a ton of fan club and watch parties and things for all the different NFL initiatives that they've done around the games in London to try to keep growing interest and build up those global fan clubs. Those folks may never come to a game in the States. But they're still incredibly valued. They still represent that global fan base, and that still means a lot to the organization.
So, go ahead, Brent.
You just touched on something. Paul knows I talk about this all the time. I've been a Rams fan since I was 5 years old. I've never lived in Los Angeles or St. Louis. I can't get a season ticket. It wouldn't make any sense. And in certain instances, it feels like because of my being geographically challenged, being a Rams fan, I'm not actually considered a Rams fan to the actual organization. Although wherever anybody sees me, if I'm speaking somewhere or if I'm doing live stream, I'm wearing like Rams hats and Rams. I'm like the biggest Rams supporter there is. But to the organization, I don't think they see it like that. Do you see opportunities because things are going more digital for teams to actually treat folks like me like the Rams fans that we are and kind of feel like we're important to the organization?
Yeah, no, definitely there's opportunity. It probably depends a little bit on the organization and where they need to focus resources. Paul, I know you've talked talking about sports and seat and other events, and you know the teams are essentially small to mid-sized businesses when you look at the staffing, when you look at the people that are actually on the front line dealing with customers, selling partnerships, selling hospitality, et cetera. Yeah. So there's always in just a fundamental, like, how do we prioritize? Everyone needs to make those decisions. And so I won't speak for the Rams or the Giants in any sense there, but yes, if you were just looking at it from a pure numbers perspective, you say, all right, what is the lifetime value of different fans in different places? Someone who does not live anywhere near that particular team in one sense is going to have a different impact than others. Now, what that just means is, all right, how we engage with folks that aren't local needs to not be about tickets. It needs to be maybe things that aren't very time consuming for individuals. They need to be part of that broader engagement. So, and the Rams or any team being a national team that has national fan base exposure, that draws in national brands. So even if you don't have an high individual lifetime value to be a Rams ticket buyer, you, in the context of as many Rams fans as there are around the world or around the country, represent a ton of value to the Rams brand and what the Rams brand could then do with that out there in the marketplace. So okay.
No, I was just going to say the interesting thing, and I think it's sports has this unique model. Like I buy a ton of stuff from Fanatics. So Fanatics knows just how much I buy. But the Rams, I don't know how much of that information is shared with the teams. Like, I don't have a season ticket, so I'm not in that bucket. But I buy a lot of Rams stuff. It's just not directly from Rams. It's through Fanatics. So do teams know, like, does Fanatics share that kind of information? How does that work?
Every deal is going to be a little different. Every team kind of works with Fanatics definitely works with more teams than pretty much any other third party. I mean, across all the big five. So in general, yes, those part of those deals as the official e-commerce provider is there's data sharing, because they're essentially handling the merchandise on behalf of the Giants or on behalf of the team. So that means that you do work with them and you get insights from Fanatics about who the buyers are, what they're buying, and so you can definitely use that information any number of ways. Over the last few years, sports shifted from this emphasis on CRM to that much bigger data lake, data warehouse ecosystem, because they are trying to wrap their hands around all of these different sources, right? When I teach one of the first things I teach in my course at Columbia was I ask my students, do we have big data in sports? Not sports performance. I'll put that aside, because yes, absolutely, tons of wearables, like the amount of data you can generate. And listen, I asked the question in a way just to kind of poke the bear a little bit. If you really keep pushing further and further, we probably do have quote unquote big data. But to me, the biggest challenges typically that you work with on the business side aren't because of quote big data. It's because of disparate data, right? Sports is an industry of other industries. We are a hospitality industry. We are a marketing industry. We are an e-commerce industry. We are a concessions industry. We are a branding. Like there's so many different little elements that each of them essentially usually comes from an entirely different, either a partner or a system, that we then need to magically tie up together into this complete picture of who everyone is as a fan. And so that's where the industry's really emphasized a lot of the BI efforts over the last few years, is to just keep expanding. Some teams have 20 different individualized feeds of data into their warehouse to try to come up with as good of a picture as they can of understanding their fans. And it's not just the local fans. It could be the regional fans. It could be the global fans. And that way they can figure out the right way to stay engaged and generate value from a fan anywhere.
I'm just going to say this. It would be great. And I'm talking to the Rams here, talking to my team. They should know that I spend probably more money on stuff than if I bought a season ticket.
Yeah.
You would think that I would get some kind of a notification. Hey, Brent, thanks for sharing our brand with everybody and for spending a lot of money on our brand. But I don't get that. And that's why I'm asking these questions. It seems like there's a pretty serious disconnect for the opportunity to bring folks like me further in. Although I'll still probably buy this stuff anyway.
Well, I mean, I think it's interesting because there is, it's funny with all the years now from the outside looking in on the sports world and working with Seed a bit. There is a funny, weird little myopia in that just sort of persists on how to act. It's not so much that they're not aware of engagement, but they are very aware of it, obviously, and a lot. I'm speaking generically, not about any particular team here, but they don't really do the things necessary to execute to engage. Right, to your point, Brent, is one. Another one which I've talked about before is, and this was just like a with me when in 2009 I was in Bogota, Colombia, and I was watching the Yankees against the Phillies, in the World Series, and I knew it was a 6th game, and I literally bugged out on a dinner in Bogota, a business dinner, so I could watch the game. And I was in a boat. I was watching it in a hotel room by myself, and I found it on Bogota television in Spanish and listened to it on my iPhone. On the MLB side. So I could listen to Susan Waldem and John Sterling. And it was with about an 8-second delay, which is kind of weird. But the thing that was most interesting was all night I was communicating with Yankees fans on Facebook and Twitter. And at that point, I had my Facebook and Twitter accounts linked. So every time I tweet, it would generate something on Facebook. So at one point, I tweeted one thing, and then it generated 94 comments on Facebook. And then I would engage with the hashtags, like hashtag Yankees, hashtag Phillies, too. I wasn't really trash talking, but it's sort of mildly trash talking. And this went on all night, right? And it was thousands of people involved in this as the game was moving on. Yankees win, they win the series, celebration, watch that. But this is what I remember. As that ended, the celebration ended and they were going off air and stuff like that on TV, one thing happened. This guy, David Mangan, who was a very influential guy out of Minnesota, comes on Facebook and says to me, "Hey, that was great." He's a Twins fan, though. "That was great. I'll see you next year." And that was it. The ad hoc communities that had formed all night dissipated. And all it would have taken is for the Yankees, for somebody to come in, like somebody from the Yankees to come in and say, "Hey, party continues over here," and take us somewhere. And it would
should have been Derek Jeter. Why didn't Jeter do that?
He might have been a little busy at the moment.
Honestly, it literally could have been a dead old timer, right? It wouldn't have mattered, right? Anybody just had to get on from the Yankees and say, "Party continues here," and that all that energy and excitement could have been organized, data captured, all kinds of things could have happened, and people would have been excited and communicating with the Yankees directly, and it didn't happen. And you know what? To this day, they still haven't figured that thing out. That when the energy is there, you don't let it dissipate. You actually jump in and organize it and capture it and move it, right? And it takes one person doing one thing.
I think he has a delicate balance, because some people would say, well, you have this private group, and if they try to move you somewhere else, they shouldn't, right? Like if
it was already though.
But that one was sure. So there's, every channel, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, everything's got different strengths. So Twitter is this massive open conversation, and I'd say teams tend to be replying more on there because it's this big public conversation. You can reply back to people, you can retweet people, and people can pop in and out of it. People can choose to participate. People can just choose to watch. When you get into Facebook, there's more walls, right? That conversation, certain conversations, you'll never be able to see that they're happening because people don't want them to. If the conversation's happening on a page that the team does have access to, then odds are the team should be engaging in that page, or the team should be using social listening tools to try to identify where the most conversation is taking place. The challenge, of course, is literally, like I said earlier, during massive live sporting events, say the winning game of the World Series, the Super Bowl, 50% of the conversation of what's happening on Twitter is all related to what's actually happening at that moment in time. So I think every team is trying to find the right balance between participatory, bringing you over to a conversation where the team has a little more control without making it feel like, you're taking control from people because you don't want to do that. Surprising and delighting, popping in and out. It's great that there is so much of that enthusiasm around the world at all these different events. And I think everyone just tries to find that right balance between when they should jump in and when they should just let people have their moments where they're having their moments.
You know what? I guess what I'm trying to say is that I can change and you can change and everybody can change.
Full circle.
And on that note, hey man, this has been great. It's a shame that we have to cut it off, but we do. But you'll be back. I hope you'll be back.
Are you continuing another time?
Sure.
All right, consider it done.
Absolutely. All right. Okay. So for Russell Scibetti, I'm Brent Leary.
I'm Paul Greenberg.
got the CRM Playaz, and we got to get out of here. We're already running late. We'll see you next week.